Just found this video where this guy, this Muslim guy, he's comparing the 9/11 attacks to the Air India plane crash 171. It happened much more recently. Now that said, so you can see my face more clearly. That said, what he's saying is pretty debunkable. Okay, it's pretty annoying and it's pretty easy to point out what is going wrong with how he's explaining things. So I'm just going to start rewatching the video. I watched the first couple of minutes so far, and as we watch, I'll tell you why. Even though I'm not a 9/11 expert, I'll tell you exactly why I think what he's saying is just completely misled, honestly. So I don't know which group he's from, but let's just start again. Right, this video is in Hindi or Urdu, I'm not sure, but Hindi. Something Hindi-ish. So I bet I can translate that pretty easily. Hindi and Urdu are almost just like, they're less different than British and American English, so. Hmm. Okay, here's the first difference you can see between this crash and 9/11 is that this landed at the exact top of the building. That's pretty significant. Okay, there's many more differences that would actually explain exactly what he's explaining. Okay. Apparently, allegedly, this sort of airplane was used in 9/11. The answer is no. The Boeing 787 was only commissioned in 2011, and 9/11 was in 2001. 9/11 used Boeing 757 and I think 747. I'm not sure, but this is a 787. It's a Dreamliner. Now, I'm not sure how much difference that makes, but I do think the 747 and 757s are bigger. Okay? Now, that is a pretty impressive feat, but I'll tell you a very simple reason. Do you know why an ant can lift 50 times its weight, but you cannot even lift double your weight? Or definitely can't even lift 5 your weight? Because the taller you are, the harder it is to have the same proportional strength. It's called the square cube law, and it doesn't just apply to living things, it also applies to buildings. Second of all, see the inside of this building. This is not the only building that survived the plane strike. The World Trade Center 1 and 2 buildings, of course, they fell down after plane strikes. But the Empire State Building had been hit by a plane, and it stood standing. The Pentagon had also been hit by a plane, it stood standing. Several other buildings have been hit by planes in the past, they stood standing, and it was not publicized because, well, buildings that stay standing after getting hit by planes are not so dramatic. That's why. They're not so rare. That's why. In fact, most well built structures will stay standing after being hit by a plane. They won't completely collapse. Most of them. Right? Second of all, look here. In any building in India, if you've been to India, almost every building is made of two things: reinforced concrete, cement, and tile. They virtually never use anything flammable in building buildings in India, so there was no prolonged fire after it hit. There was a giant fireball because of a nearly full fuel tank. There was no full prolonged fire. That's one reason, of course. This building wouldn't fall because the twin towers only fell because of fire, not because of the plane strike alone. Anyway, let's keep going. Well, first of all, I don't think there's any such thing as an unbreakable, uncollapsible building. It's kind of like an unsinkable ship. Now, they thought nothing natural could make it collapse. That makes sense. There ain't nothing natural about the 9/11 attacks. And second of all, huh, take this here. The building was not only made out of steel, it was also made out of drywall and insulation. And drywall and insulation is very flammable. This building doesn't have any of that, but keep going. In 5th or 6th grade physics, if a structure is hit from the top by some weight, okay. If the structure is 100 kilogram,
उसका वजन 20 किलोग्राम
huh?
और इसको आपने हिट किया, ये इम्पॉसिबल है कि 20 किलोग्राम 100 किलोग्राम को ऐसे गिराए जो जीरो ग्रेविटी की करके ना।
First of all, you're basically implying that it's impossible that 20 kilograms can fall off on top of some structure that's 100 kilograms and make you fall at free fall speed. Well, in order to test this, what you do is you take a 20 kilogram dumbbell, lift it up 3 meters, and then have it fall on your head. If you're knocked out, that could actually prove you right. Obviously, this is completely impossible that a 100 kg guy can be knocked out, cooled, and basically free fall after being hit by a 20 kg weight. Also, this is at a fast speed, it's not a free fall speed. The towers are not falling at free fall speed. That's the first thing. Even if they were dynamite in here, which I don't think there was, they wouldn't be falling at free fall speed. But okay. And it's he's implying that it's basically impossible for a lightweight structure to fall on a heavyweight structure and damage it. That is not true. That is not true at all. Okay? And I can prove it. I mean, I'll do the same. I'll do the same. I'll take a 20 kg dumbbell. You look like to be about 80 kgs. I'm going to drop it from 3 meters onto your head. See if you don't fall down or if you're completely undamaged and if it's completely unbreakable. Let's see. I mean, you might survive. I'm not saying it's unsurvivable. But if you really think it's impossible for someone to be knocked out by that, you're kind of stupid. Anyway.
जो फ्री फॉल का रेट होता है ग्रेविटी के मुताबिक पूरी बिल्डिंग एक कोलैप्स हुई फिर दूसरी कोलैप्स हुई, ये फिजिक्स के कवानीन के खिलाफ है। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि आप पहले ये मसला हल कर लें कि 9/11 कैसे हुआ, इस पे सारे काम छोड़ दो, बोर्ड ऑफ एवरीथिंग, कोई मीटिंग नहीं करेंगे कोई। ठीक है, अमेरिका के वो लोग जो अमेरिका के खैरख्वाह हैं, जो चाहते हैं कि दुनिया में अमन फैले और अमेरिका का पॉजिटिव इमेज हो, वो लोग इकट्ठे हो जाएं, दुनिया के लोग इकट्ठे हो जाएं और कहीं यार पहले ये मसला हल कर देते हैं कि ये 9/11 में हुआ क्या था। बिल्डिंग 7 जिसको कुछ भी नहीं लगा, वो तो लगता है शर्म से गिर गई थी।
Building 7, which was not hit by anything, it seems like that building just fell out of shame. First of all, Building 7 was hit by debris from Building 1 and 2. So it was by no means not hit by anything. Okay, it was also on fire. Okay? And if this was an inside job, then again, I mean, why exactly would they not wait until Building 1 and 2 were evacuated, but wait until Building 7 was evacuated? But then again, I mean, any inside job would do stuff to throw people off anyway, to make it not look like an inside job, so that itself doesn't disprove anything. But still, Building 7 was definitely hit, okay? It was just not hit by the plane directly. It was hit by debris. But he's saying Building 7, which was hit by nothing, that it feels like it fell down in shame. That is not true.
वो बिल्डिंग क्यों गिरी? अच्छा, फिर डोनाल्ड रम्सफेल्ड का ऑफिस पेंटागन में जाके जो जहाँ लगा वो सारा वो जगह ही वो थी जहाँ तो मिला नहीं। उन्होंने कहा पूरा, यानी ये ऑफिशियल नैरेटिव है, मेरे पास ऑफिशियल नैरेटिव का पूरा वो डॉक्यूमेंट पड़ा हुआ है। वो उसमें लिखते हैं कि जो चीज़ लगी है जहाज बोइंग 747 जो है वेपराइज हो गई।
Okay. So he's claiming he's got the official document of the Pentagon strike. Now, of course, he doesn't hold up the official document. He just speaks from his head, right? And that official document claims that the entire 747 vaporized, but of course, the entire plane did not vaporize when it hit that two-story hostel in India. First of all, those two are not comparable. The one that hit the two-story hostel was a 787, and the one that hit the Pentagon was a 747, or I'm not sure if it was 757. Okay, those are not the same plane. Second of all, the pilots who had landed in the Air India 717 into that Costa, they had lost thrust, so they weren't going like dramatic. They weren't speeding up. They were trying to slow down as they were flying. And the guy who crashed the plane into the Pentagon was trying to speed up as he was flying. And here we have basic 7th grade physics. Just like you cited, basic 5th grade physics means it's impossible for a 20 kg weight to knock out a 100 kg guy. Basic 7th grade physics is going to tell you that kinetic energy, the ability of a moving object to actually wreck and destroy stuff, simply speaking, exponentially increases with speed. So if that plane was even going 50-60% faster easily, the kinetic energy would be much, much more. Okay? Now also note that the Pentagon is not just a hostile. It's not just made out of concrete, it doesn't catch fire, so it's not going to keep getting weaker after getting hit. And it's just a couple stories, so it's not like, the floors are going to fall from a huge distance onto each other. The Pentagon was made out of solid stone, okay? It was a very, very dense structure. So it's not hard to believe that plane, like everything there, was destroyed. Also, Where exactly did you get the idea that every single part of that plane was vaporized? This is. I mean, I haven't read the document myself, but I do feel that he might not be reading a credible or original document in the first place about the Pentagon strike on 9/11. But okay, here we go.
आप सोचें टाइटेनियम एलॉय को बोइंग के यानी इंजन है उसका इंजन जो लगा हुआ है टाइटेनियम एलॉय का
Oh, okay, okay. You're saying the engine is titanium alloy.
इंजन है
Keep going.
वो यानी कहते हैं जेट फ्यूल ने उस पूरे जहाज को वेपराइज कर दिया लेकिन
Where did he read that the entire plane that hit the Pentagon was 100% vaporized by jet fuel? Where did you read that? The one that hit the Pentagon. Where did he read that? Of course, a smaller building. It doesn't have enough material in it to like basically absorb the entire plane and vaporize everything. Right? Part of it would be still sticking out. Right? The outside of the World Trade Center, there's a glass window, so the plane's gonna slip right in. Obviously. No, keep going.
ट्रांसपोर्ट में तो मैं ये चाहता हूँ खुदारा प्लीज़ मेरी रिक्वेस्ट है ये 9/11 वाला मसला हल करो क्योंकि देखो अगर तो 9/11 देखिए मैं इसका ब्यूटीफुल बात करूँ अगर तो 9/11 वाकई में जो हुआ सो हुआ हम कहते हैं जी बिल्कुल हमारी गलती थी हमने आपको शक किया साबित हो गया ना अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ठीक नो प्रॉब्लम लेकिन अगर साबित हुआ कि इट वाज एन इनसाइड जॉब व्हाट डज दैट से अबाउट अमेरिका व्हाट डज दैट से अबाउट Jewish nobel
So he's trying to say that the fact that the towers fell down and the fact that the plane was vaporized by who said that exactly seems to be evidence that 9/11 was an inside job. Okay, except that the towers fell down because they were from flames, not from the plane strike alone, and the plane was destroyed because it crashed into a building, and I don't think it was completely vaporized. Because I've actually seen the air crash investigation episode about the Pentagon strike on World on 9/11 as well. So yeah. So my point is, your evidence is kind of messed up. I don't know where the heck you're reading this from. It doesn't seem like you're reading it from credible sources. Because frankly speaking, even if 9/11 was an inside job, the evidence that you're saying is actually kind of questionable at best. Let's just say it's questionable at best.
व्हाट डज दैट से अबाउट यानी इससे इतने बड़े सवाल उठते हैं यार आप लोगों ने अपने बंदे मार दिए फॉल्स फ्लैग ऑपरेशन के चक्करों में आपने अपने बंदे मारे जो लोग जो ओनर था ट्विन टावर्स का वो उस दिन छुट्टी पे था उसके बारे में लोग कहते हैं उसने कभी ज़िंदगी में छुट्टी नहीं की वो इतना बड़ा वर्कहॉलिक था वो तो कभी छुट्टी नहीं करता था और वो जो सेंट्री में इसमें वो आए बाएं शाएं कर रहा है जो होता है ना जब बच्चा बहुत ज़्यादा वजाते दे रहा होता तो पता चल जाता है कि
Yes, this part is. I think it's true, but I haven't confirmed this. But yeah, the owner of the Twin Towers was on a vacation, or on a leave that exact day, and he'd never taken a leave before ever. That is, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. I'm not even saying that he's completely wrong, but what I'm saying is a lot of the evidence he's saying here, it doesn't make any sense. Like, where did they say that the planes that hit the Pentagon was absolutely 100% vaporized? Right? Okay. And why is he saying that it's simple physics that the top of the tower falling on the bottom of the tower would make it, collapse or something? And of course, he's not correct about nothing had hit World Trade hit Building 7. That is not true. That is really not true. Okay. Now, does 75% of what he's saying being incorrect actually on its own disprove that 9/11 was or was not an inside job? No. But I'm just saying your points that you're using to steer it are kind of questionable. Like, they don't make any sense. I've seen a lot of stuff about this, or enough stuff to
तुम्हारी
really question you here.
तो उसे कहा आप क्यों नहीं आए ऑफिस वो 2 मिनट का जवाब दे दे रहा वो एक्चुअली मैं वो था मेरी बेगम ने कहा था कि तुम बीमार हो तो तुम डॉक्टर के पास चले जाओ कुछ इलाज कर दो तो मेरी तबीयत नहीं थी अभी इतनी लंबी सवाइयाँ क्यों दे रहे हो यार उसी दिन तुम गायब हो सो मैं चले कंस्पिरेसी को छोड़े मैं फैक्ट्स ऑन ग्राउंड पे बात करूँ ये मुझे स्ट्रक्चरली समझा दें जहाज लगने से बिल्डिंग कैसे गिरती है क्योंकि जो लोग इंजीनियर्स हैं वो कह रहे हैं इसमें डेमोलिशन यानी डेमोलिशन चार्जेस थे जो कि कभी बिल्डिंग गिरानी होती है अमेरिका में बिल्डिंग गिराते हैं जो ना डिमोलिश करते नहीं बनाते हैं तो अगर डेमोलिशन था तो डेमोलिशन प्लांट मॉल पे गिरी है। कैसे गिरी, किसने गिराई, किसने ऑर्डर दिया था उसका? मुझे बताएं जो जहाज
Here's the thing: he's seeing from the other side of Building 7. There was serious damage on the other side that's not visible in this video of Building 7. Now, of course, does that on its own prove that there was absolutely no demolition explosive nonsense? Does that on its own prove that? No, but his point that Building 7 was not hit by anything, that is not true. Anyway.
आप कह रहे हो बोइंग 747 लगा था पेंटागन में, उसकी फुटेज किधर है? वो सीसीटीवी फुटेज कहाँ है? वो तो फौरन एफबीआई ने कॉन्फिस्केट कर ली। वो क्यों नहीं मंजर आम पे लेकर आया? तो ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल है। और देखिए
Yeah, that's a good question because there were actually eyewitnesses to the Pentagon being hit in 9/11. But here's the thing, though: the fact that he's saying questionable stuff, that Building 7 absolutely nothing had hit Building 7 and it still fell down out of shame apparently, and the plane had vaporized on hitting the Pentagon, according to reports, which I don't know if anyone could falsify that. Hmm. The fact that some of the evidence he said before is already doesn't make any sense, questionable, and so on, and basically also demonstrably false. That also does mean that, yeah, how is that even
बताएं
possible?
जो जहाज अपेरेंटली आप कह रहे हो बोइंग 747 लगा था पेंटागन में, उसकी फुटेज किधर है? वो सीसीटीवी फुटेज कहाँ है?
Where's the security footage of that? What I'm saying is that there might have been security footage, but he might be studying from a source that's so unreliable and so incorrect that it said that this CCTV footage was completely destroyed. If he really thinks Building 7 was not hit by anything, then he might also be wrong on this.
वो तो फौरन एफबीआई ने
Hmm.
कॉन्फिस्केट कर ली। वो क्यों नहीं मंजर आम पे लेकर आया? तो ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल है। और देखिए इसका जो भी जवाब होगा ना, उसका जवाब अच्छा नहीं होगा। जो भी जवाब होगा उसके बड़े सीरियस रिपरकशंस होंगे पूरी दुनिया की जियोपॉलिटिकल एनवायरनमेंट के ऊपर।
Whatever answer to these questions he had are going to have very serious repercussions to the entire world's geopolitical environment. What if I told you that 3/4 of the stuff you're saying is just completely false? Okay. What if I told you that? What if I told you that there was no CCTV footage, maybe because they neglected to put a CCTV camera there, or maybe because they're fooling around with you and you've read from an unreliable source, and there indeed was CCTV footage? What about that? What if I told you that the reason that the plane was not intact because it flew into a building made out of solid rock, not even concrete, out of solid rock? Maybe that's why it wasn't found intact. Anyway, yeah. And yet, even with this knowledge, there are still ways that this could be an inside job. It could be a partial inside job. Him being wrong about the collapses of the buildings and their details doesn't on its own actually disprove anything else is going on. But keep going.
और मैं समझता हूँ अगर वो चीज़ सामने आ जाती है, और अल्लाह करे आ जाए, और देखिए अब तो बहुत सारे लोग इवन जो मेन स्ट्रीम हुआ करते थे ना, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह देयर इज एन अवेकनिंग। इवन मैंने जो आपको थोड़ी देर पहले बताया था, कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी के अंदर दरारें पड़ रही, उनको भी समझ में आ रहा है कि हमारी हुकूमत हमसे सच नहीं बोल रही। और देखिए अब तो
Okay, just see
बहुत सारे
here.
लोग इवन जो
My point was Building 7 was actually hit by debris very badly on the other side. It's facing away from the camera. Right in this angle.
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह देयर इज एन अवेकनिंग। इवन मैंने जो आपको थोड़ी देर पहले बताया था, कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी के अंदर दरारें पड़ रही, उनको भी
You see how it's starting? It started to fall straight down, but it started to lean towards as it fell. And that itself seems to be signs of there was some damage more to this side on Building 7, the side which we're not seeing.
समझ में
See?
आ रहा है।
It's leaning forward as it falls. And if anyone knows anything about controlled demolition is where they want to make the building fall straight down. Now, I mean, well, this could be an exception. Everyone evacuated that area. But still, with the idea you said about Building 7 was not hit by anything is just completely wrong. That is true. But I need to study this 9/11 from like credible first-hand sources. Anyway, so Hmm.
कि हमारी हुकूमत हमसे सच नहीं बोल रही है। नोम चॉम्स्की की किताब है बड़ी मशहूर, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसेंट। वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसेंट तब भी था और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंसेंट आज भी है। आज भी जिस तरह से वो जो पहले इन्होंने गन किया था, अभी भी जिस तरह अमेरिका को यानी घसीटा जा रहा है इसमें और फिर बाकी ममालिक को साथ शामिल किया जा रहा है, ये कंसेंट को मैन्युफैक्चर करते हैं, इंजीनियर करते हैं, डॉक्टर करते हैं।
Hmm.
यानी ये तो इवन अभी जो अभी हम थोड़ी देर पहले बात कर रहे थे, इसका जो इंटरव्यू हुआ था टकर कार्लसन का टेड क्रूज के साथ, तो उसमें उसने पूछा कि आप मुझे बताएं हमारे एसेट्स कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ होते हैं नहीं, हमारे अंदर जो आपके एलाइज हैं, आपके जो एलाइज हैं, अमेरिका के एलाइज हैं, उसका मतलब था इसराइल वगैरह, अंदर इंटेलिजेंस ऑपरेशन करते हैं कि नहीं करते? आप मुझे बताएं आपके यहाँ पे इंटेलिजेंस ब्रीचेस हैं या नहीं है? उसने कहा वो तो यार सारे ही करते हैं, हम भी उनकी करते हैं, वो हमारी करते हैं। यानी इन शॉर्ट उसको भी पता है कि हम करते हैं। द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज कि देखिए हम सबको ना एक मंजर बेचा जाता है, एक विजन बेचा जाता है कि अमेरिका जो है वो बहुत अच्छा है और देखिए टेररिस्ट आ गए, अमेरिकन ड्रीम भी है। और दूसरा ये कि देखिए ना अमेरिका तो खैर ख्वाह है सारों का, देखो ना यहाँ पे ये लोग मस्ती कर रहे थे, हमने इनको सीधा कर दिया, जब ये मस्ती करते हमने इनको सीधा किया, ये देखो ना यहाँ टेररिस्ट उठ के हमारे लैंड पे आ गए हैं। अगर ये चीज़ साबित हो जाती है कि वो टेररिस्ट नहीं थे या आपने कुछ लोगों को यूज़ किया, फलां किया, मेन मास्टरमाइंड आप ही थे इस चीज़ के, तो फिर इसका जो कॉन्सिक्वेंस होगा ना वो पूरी दुनिया के लिए बहुत डिफरेंट होगा। अगर ये चीज़ अच्छा है और देखिए टेररिस्ट आ गए, अमेरिकन ड्रीम भी है। और दूसरा ये कि देखिए ना अमेरिका तो खैर ख्वाह है सारों का, देखो ना यहाँ पे ये लोग मस्ती कर रहे थे, हमने इनको सीधा कर दिया, जब ये मस्ती कर रहे हमने इनको सीधा किया, ये देखो ना यहाँ टेररिस्ट उठ के हमारे लैंड पे आ गए हैं। अगर ये चीज़
Masti
साबित हो
kar rahe
जाती है
the.
कि
They
वो
were having
टेररिस्ट
fun. Come
नहीं थे
on.
या आपने कुछ लोगों को यूज़ किया, फलां किया, मेन मास्टरमाइंड आप ही थे इस चीज़ के, तो फिर इसका जो कॉन्सिक्वेंस होगा ना वो पूरी दुनिया के लिए बहुत डिफरेंट होगा। तो और अगर उसकी तरफ हम पहुंच जाते हैं तो मुझे बताएं फिर बाकी ममालिक की क्या स्टैंडिंग है। इस वक्त आपने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले बात की थी कि हमारी तरफ इस वक्त दो कैंप्स हैं ना, एक कैंप है ईरान वाला कैंप है, ईरान वाले कैंप में जो जो शामिल हो रहा है, एक एक नेक्सस बन सकता है, मतलब अगर हम अल्लाह ना करे जंग अजीम 3 हो, लेकिन अगर वो उस तरफ बात जाती है तो समझ में आता है कि यहाँ पे शायद
Hmm.
अल्लाह वाला अल्लाह बेहतर जानता है, लास्ट मिनट पे हम किसी को ट्रस्ट तो कर नहीं सकते, कोई भी बदल सकता है। चाइना है, रशिया है, ईरान है, उसमें आप पाकिस्तान को भी डाल दें अगर पाकिस्तान वाकई में अपने सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट को देख रहा है, और इसी के साथ साथ और भी देखिए कुछ ममालिक इसमें शामिल हो सकते, तुर्की है। अच्छा दूसरी तरफ जो है अमेरिका है, इसराइल है, यूके है, शायद बीच में इंडिया भी कूद जाए, ठीक है। अच्छा ये जो ब्लॉक बन रहा है, ये सारे वो लोग हैं आमतौर पर आपको नजर आएगा जो खुद कॉलोनियल माइंडसेट वाले लोग हैं, जो कॉलोनाइज करने वाले लोग हैं, और ये वो लोग हैं जिनमें सबसे ज़्यादा पेनिट्रेशन है जूश टॉपिक, जिसके बारे में इवन अमेरिका में अब आवाज़ें उठ रही हैं कि हम क्यों, हमें कोई और कंट्रोल करता है। इसके लिए बहुत सारी किताबें भी हैं जो अगर आप पढ़ेंगे तो फिर आपको आइडिया होगा कि असल में हु इज़ रनिंग द शो, यानी हाउ द वर्ल्ड वर्क्स, जो है ना, जिसमें नोम चॉम्स्की भी किताब है इसके ऊपर कि हाउ द वर्ल्ड वर्क्स। तो जब आपको पहले पहले आप ग्रेटर गेम समझ जाएं, आप ये समझ लें कि दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है। मैं थोड़ी सी चीज़ एक तरफ लेके जाऊँगा आपको कि हम जब इस्लाम की बात करते हैं, दीन की बात करते हैं, आपको पता है इस पूरे प्लॉट में एक और प्लॉट ट्विस्ट थी, और वो प्लॉट ट्विस्ट जो है वो इससे भी ज़्यादा खतरनाक है जो मैंने अभी बात की है 9/11 वाले हिस्ट्री की। और वो ये है कि इनमें से बहुत सारे लोग एडमिट कर चुके हैं और उनके वीडियोस भी अवेलेबल हैं कि जो सेटनिज्म के साथ और जो फ्रीमासोनिक इनकी जो एक्टिविटीज़ हैं और मैजिक के रिचुअल्स हैं उसके साथ अपने आप को एसोसिएट करते हैं। और आप यकीन करें अगर वंस यू गो डाउन दिस रैबिट होल, इसमें जब आप जाना शुरू करेंगे ना, आप
Yeah,
हैरान हो
I
जाएंगे।
agree. It's a huge rabbit hole.
आपका दिमाग जो है ना वो फ्राई हो जाएगा। अगर
Yeah.
आप ये देखें कि वाकई में इन एलीट सर्कल्स में किस किस्म के रिचुअल्स होते हैं, किस और मैं आपको बताऊं, चलें छोटी छोटी बात, जॉर्ज बुश से पूछा गया कि आप स्कल एंड बोन सोसाइटी के मेंबर रह चुके हैं, एक सीक्रेट क्लब है, उसमें क्या होता था, कहता होता था प्रेसिडेंट हो, अब बताओ ना, क्योंकि देखिए आपने क्या छुपाना, आप कहीं देखिए मैं अगर लेट्स सपोज मैं अमेरिका सदर हूँ और मैं किसी खुफिया किस्म की तंजीम का हिस्सा बना हुआ, खुफिया तंजीम है, ओपनली खुफिया है, नहीं बताती हमारा एजेंडा क्या है, तो आपको तो परेशान होना चाहिए कि यार हमारा सदर कहाँ जाता है, किससे मिलता है, क्या करता है, पता नहीं खून पीता है, क्या करता है, हमें तो पता ही नहीं, इतना मैं नहीं बता सकता, वो मतलब हंस के टाल दिया सीक्रेट है।
Hmm.
यही सवाल जो है वो क्या कहते हैं जॉन कैरी से पूछा गया, वो भी इसी तरह का जवाब दिया। यानी जितने भी आपके लोग आते हैं, फिर वो एक इनका एक्सपोजे हुआ था बोहेमियन ग्रोव वाला, वहाँ पे क्या हो रहा था उसको देखिए, तो ये कुछ बेसिक सवाल हैं जो कि इनको चाहिए कि ये जवाब दें उसका, वेरी सिंपल।
Okay, so basically, this guy is using questionable facts about 9/11, claiming that plane crashes can't really crash buildings because another plane crash didn't crash a building. Well, obviously, that ignores the fact that the buildings are not even the same type, the planes are not even the same type, and the situation after was not even the same type, the planes that crashed was not the same. There are other buildings in America that did survive plane crashes. There were other buildings that were never crashed into by a plane that did collapse even without any demolition. Okay. And then he's saying that, yeah, okay, so the buildings collapsed because there was an inside job that somebody put dynamite there, right? Then he's saying that World Trade Center 7 collapsed after no apparent damage was done, which is not true at all. And then he's saying that leads us down the rabbit hole of all the 9/11 conspiracies and all of that stuff, and that this is really an inside job. So use mostly incorrect information to say that it leads towards okay, and then say it was inside job. Hmm. Well, thankfully, you yourself have admitted that if you're wrong, you can accept that you're wrong. I just really think you guys are not right. I think you're going off of really questionable sources. I wanted to see myself where this idea that the plane that hit the Pentagon was vaporized actually came
देखो
from.
एक होता है मैं खुद बहुत खिलाफ हूँ कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी के और मैं बहुत खिलाफ हूँ एमी बस हवाई बातें इधर की उधर लगाई उधर की उधर लेकिन कुछ चीज़ें ना देखें जहाँ कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी की बात आती है उनमें कुछ चीज़ें फैक्चुअल भी हैं और वो सीरियसली बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन है
That is true. Most conspiracies are based off something that is factual. Otherwise, they wouldn't be conspiracy theories at all. They'd be completely contrived. But I'm gonna see because there's two things that just stuck out to me. Is there's no way that's correct. Okay, I mean, let alone the fact that fifth grade physics is gonna tell you the top of a structure cannot fall down onto the rest of the structure and make it break. That is not true. I mean, that is not true at all. Anyway, that said, I'm gonna see the Pentagon crash from the most credible sources I can find, which is of people actually documenting it. There was no security cam footage of the Pentagon being crashed into. Are you sure? I'm gonna check that out right here and right on the same reaction.
तो मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि कम से कम आप देखें जो चीज़ भी है हक और बातिल बातिल सामने हो जाए ना फर्क बाज हो जाए पता तो चले कि बिहाइंड क्लोज डोर होता क्या है जो आप पे एलिगेशन हैं जो आप पे इल्जामात हैं जो आपके अपने मेंबर फरार होकर बाहर आए और उन्होंने बताया
And this is one case, sadly, of you being wrong does not prove your point wrong on its own. So I'm gonna watch all
ये हुआ
this.
ये हुआ ये हुआ ये सारे खड़ा हो गया पावर आदमी यार वो जो अच्छा वाला सेंसिबल आदमी है आप उसको बिठाओ पूछो तो सही हुआ क्या है कितने इनके वीडियोस अवेलेबल हैं जहाँ पे लोग बहुत रोने की किस्म के वीडियोस पे एडमिट कर रहे हैं ऑन रिकॉर्ड आपके मतलब काउंटलेस नंबर सो मैं ये समझता हूँ कि हमारा जो बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है इसके ऊपर है वो ये है कि ये दुनिया क्यों चला रहे हैं और वाकई में जब आप इसको क्रिस्टलाइज करेंगे तो हमारे दीनी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से यानी एट दी एंड आ जाएगा या तो हिजबुर रहमान है इबादुर रहमान है या इबादत शैतान है या तो अल्लाह वाले लोग हैं या शैतान वाले लोग हैं मैं आपको ना बहुत सिंप्लीफाई करके बता रहा हूँ लिटरली इट विल ऑल बॉयल डाउन टू दिस थिंग या तो वो लोग हैं जिनके अंदर कोई खुदा खौफी है या वो लोग हैं जो अल्लाह से कटे हुए और पता नहीं किस लूसिफेरियन और
Yeah,
शैतानी
but I don't know how to
वो
keep you
करने वाले
alive, so I'm just
उनके
putting
पता
this
नहीं क्या
down.
कुछ करने वाले
Huh.
घिनौने किस्म के लोग हैं अभी
Okay, let me just see the Pentagon crash. There was no security cam footage of this. Let me see that. Huh. This is pretty low resolution. It looks like security cam. It says video one. Yeah, of course, the tiny little bars. No, it's not what a plane's gonna strike. But dude, the Pentagon is solid stone. Of course, a plane would not be intact after. Yeah. Yeah, you really think a plane would be intact? How was the plane vaporized? You see how much difference there is between that tiny little two-story dorm and this big building? Yeah, wait a minute. I do wonder if this is. It says CTV. I don't know. I don't. Maybe that's a precursor to CCTV. The United States Pentagon in 2001, one of the most secure military complexes on the planet, has a $5 security camera that does 2 frames per second And potato image quality. I don't think it's a cruise missile because there was an air crash investigation on this. There was an investigation on this. That many people, they definitely could be tracked down. So I don't think it was a cruise missile, but it hmm. Okay, so I want to do a reaction here.